So Bruce Hardie, hi.
Hey, James, thanks for having me, mate.
I'm excited to be here with you. You've always been one of the people that I really admire in real estate.
Very kind.
And from my time at Keller Williams International, you were one of the first people that I really got to interact with a lot from the events team, and just have always admired you. And I'm glad we get to get you here. Catch some of the people who might be watching up to speed. Right. You came to Spokane in '94, right?
Well, actually, I moved over to the States in 1990.
Cool.
I got into real estate in '94. That was
cool.
when I kicked in. So I'm coming up on, what is that now?
25 years
25
almost,
years,
right?
yeah. 25 years in May it'll be.
And so then 6 years in, you opened a Keller Williams office.
I did.
And fast forward, you've served several roles, but your most current role now is Regional Director of the Northwest region, correct?
Correct. I'm also OP still of that original market center
Very cool.
and investor in others. But my primary role, my job, so to speak, is Regional Director.
Very cool. So what originally attracted you to real estate as a career?
It's interesting. I grew up in the hotel motel business, restaurants. I'm a chef by trade, and so I grew up in the service industry. When I first came over to the United States, I didn't want to be in restaurants. The food business is really a lifestyle. You work when everybody else plays.
Yeah.
You play when everybody else sleeps, and I just didn't want to commit to that. I moved over here for a woman. My wife was doing a semester abroad in college, and we met through mutual friends. And 2 years later, I'd sold everything and moved over here, lock, stock, and barrel. So I didn't want to do that. I got in. I did a few other things trying to find my place. Ultimately, I was working for a company that sold background checks on job applicants, and most of my clients were Fortune 500 companies. So I'd be up on the phone in the morning at 6 a.m. I'd do visits, so that meant getting on a plane, flying somewhere. And after about a year and a half to 2 years, I realized I didn't know anybody in Spokane. I was getting cabin fever. And the realtor who sold us our house was the number one agent in town, had been for a long time. And I went to her and I said, hey, do you think I could sell real estate? And she said, well, yeah, I think you'd probably be okay. I said, well, if I get my license, would you be willing to have me? And it was a Coldwell Banker office.
Very cool.
And so I did, got in '94. It actually took me 9 months to sell my first house. So I wasn't a quick start, but I think about it, I was new to the country, new to Spokane, new to real estate.
Yeah.
So all of those things were against me.
Very cool, but you had the accent.
Well, that's it, man. And behind this voice, there's nothing. There's nothing.
Well, you actually told a funny joke earlier that stuck with me of, I don't have an accent. All of you people have an accent.
That's true, right? Particularly down here in Texas.
I love it. So you started your career with Coldwell Banker, awesome company. 6 years later, you're opening a Keller Williams office. Why Keller Williams?
Well, it's interesting, right? I think we're always weighing cost and benefit. And I realized that as I was looking to build a team, build my own business inside of the brokerage business, I realized that their model and the environment wasn't supporting that. And ultimately the scales tipped for me where they wouldn't allow me to hire buyer's agents and compensate them in such a way that they would stay with me. So consequently I had to go and find somewhere else. And a lot of people that I respected in the industry were transitioning to this little company called Keller Williams Realty that I'd never even heard of, to be quite frank.
Yeah, very cool. So along the way of building that team and building this awesome career, what were some of your most memorable game changer moments where the world just changed for you?
I would say number one was understanding that lead generation is everything. And I got to the point, and Gary was the one who really identified it for me, that I needed to generate leads, and realizing that early on actually I got that. I was 6 months in the business. I hadn't closed the deal yet. I had a brand new baby girl. My wife was she's a teacher of the deaf, working in Sandpoint, Idaho, which was an hour and a half away. And I was waiting tables at night, and I went into my broker and I said, Doreen, her name was, I said, Doreen, I need to sell a house. And she said, Bruce, I want you to go back to your desk. I want you to write down everybody you know. We're going to let them know you're in real estate. So I went back to my desk. 5 minutes later, I was back. I had 20 names, and 10 of them were in-laws. And I realized I didn't know enough people. And so I understood very quickly that I needed to grow the number of people that I was in relationship with. And I had to get very purposeful about that. So I actually came up with a script that worked really well for me. Is every time I met somebody, I'd say, well, hey, James, you know what? I send my friends and clients information on the real estate market from time to time. Would you be interested in receiving that?
Yeah, sure.
Everybody says, yeah.
Yeah.
Great, what's your address? What's your phone number? I didn't ask for email back in those days. But
I love that if they say no, well, do you not want to receive it, or are you not my friend?
Nobody said no. Nobody said no.
Love it.
And it allowed me to grow my database. So now I have over 6,200 in my database.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, in that career, talking about that understanding, what are some of the fail forward moments you have?
Yeah, fail forward moments. What I realized was I needed to be better than everybody else in my market. And initially, not truly understanding business. And I'm really passionate about this. I don't think the industry has done a good job in teaching us about business. The industry is treated us as salespeople, not as business owners. And so initially I was spending too much, trying to do too much for my clients, realizing that I only need to be 1% better than everybody else, not obliterate them. So initially my expenses were out of whack, my net income wasn't there, and then once I learned that, then that was a whole different ballgame for me, and I became much more effective in lead gen.
Very cool. Now, I assume along the way you probably had some rough days, some rough weeks. How do you personally rebound from those bad moments?
It is interesting. You say that. There were days that I felt like everything I touched turned to caca. And then there are days that everything you touch seems to turn to gold.
Yeah.
And what I knew is that if I just keep doing the right activities, even those bad days, they're behind, and you soon forget about them. And it was doing the right activities. I shared with the room today. One of the things that as I was coming up in the business, I would have agents in my office say, "Well, you're just lucky because you have an accent." But the truth was, they didn't understand I was the very first agent to arrive at the building in the morning. I was always the last one to leave. I'll never forget, I was a Christmas Eve. It was 5:30 in the afternoon, the parking lot's empty. I'm sitting in my office closing 3 deals and realizing I'm the only one in the building and feeling, wow, this is really a lonely business. But I was willing to outwork everybody else. And I think that was the key piece for me. That changed everything.
Gotcha. So, this is kind of a fun question. If you were starting over today, with only your knowledge and experience, none of your resources, none of your contacts, what's the one thing you'd be doing to get business started again?
Without a doubt, focus on lead generation. Gotcha. I wouldn't have taken 9 months to sell my first house. Lead generate, lead generate, lead generate. I wouldn't be sitting in an office waiting for the phone to ring, which was what I did. You know what? I'd go and hold vacant houses open all day long, and I'd work out of an open house.
Gotcha.
I have a higher likelihood of meeting people there than I do in my own office, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would do everything in my power to get out and generate leads.
Perfect. And so, along those same lines, what's the best piece of advice you have for business owners in today's marketplace?
Business is business, right? It's not just real estate. And if you think about it, the language of all business is numbers.
Yeah. You
need to know your numbers. And you know what? We are running a business with the idea of making a profit, right? So we've got to think like business owners. I'm looking for a return on my investment for every dollar I invest in my business.
Gotcha.
So holding that money accountable, right? We call it playing red light, green light, right? So if you're not holding the money accountable, you don't know whether or not you're spending too much money.
Absolutely.
And am I getting a return on it? For example, what I realized was when I got in the business, most everybody was advertising in the newspaper. So I followed suit and I did it. And as I started measuring, I realized that I was spending 20% of my budget on newspaper advertising to generate less than 3% of my leads, not even my business, 3% of my leads. And once I realized that, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop that nonsense. So by focusing on your numbers and tracking everything, I think is a key piece.
Awesome. And mentioning ROI, do you have a specific return on dollar spent that you look for?
I'm looking for a minimum of 4 to 1.
Gotcha.
Right, a minimum of 4 to 1. There are some things that are home runs, right? You can get that, but I think I'm willing to go for base hits rather than hitting for the fence every single time.
Absolutely. So in that, base hits, I absolutely love. All-time greatest hitter was because he did focus on base hits and not home runs, right? Babe Ruth's home run batting average was something ridiculously low.
Right.
I'm sure we'll look it up and add it on the notes later.
Exactly.
So what is your definition of success?
That's a great question. What's my definition of success? I think one, you've got to be enjoying what you do. You know, I love what I do. And you know what, are you hitting your goals ultimately? You know, I got to a place where on the outside people would have looked at me and said, wow, he's really successful. You know, I was a mega agent, closing around 250 transactions a year. I was OP at 2 market centers. I was a joint venture in 2 mortgage companies. I was area director for Alaska. Oh, by the way, I was KWU International faculty. I was a husband and a father.
Yeah.
And I realized one day that I wasn't happy. I felt like I had all these things going and I wasn't doing anything very well. And so I sat down, I checked myself into a hotel overlooking the lake, and I sat down with a yellow legal pad and I said, what do I want? And I realized for me that what excites me the most, what juices me personally, is helping people build successful, profitable businesses. And you know, I've sold over 2,000 homes personally, and going on another listing presentation didn't do it for me anymore. And I realized that's a bad place to be. So as I looked at it and I said, I've got all these things going, how do I put myself in a position to do more of what I love?
Gotcha.
And so I actually was able to bring in my lead listing specialist as my partner in the Hardie group. This was in 2008, by the way. So here we are now, almost 11 years later. The Hardie group is still operational. They do about 120 to 140 transactions a year. I get a check every month from that business. And I don't have to do any of that.
That's awesome.
So that feels successful to me.
So does it feel like 7th level to you, or is it 7th level?
No, it's definitely 7th
Absolutely.
level. You know, it was interesting. I was having a conversation with Gary Keller back about 2001, and I said, Gary, you know, I'm really struggling with what my exit strategy is. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, when I'm done selling real estate, how do I get value for this business that I've built? And he said, Bruce, he said, let me ask you this. If you're making $1 million a year selling real estate, would you be willing to pay someone $500,000 a year to run it? I'm like, well, yeah. He said, well, why would you sell it? If you've got a great business, you should never sell it. And that did 2 things for me. It changed my perspective, and it gave me incredible faith in Gary as our leader of our company. He doesn't need to sell Keller Williams. He won't.
I absolutely love that. You know, one of my favorite Gary stories is the conversation he had with his father when his father asked him, you know, why do you work so hard for the money? And he looked at his dad and said, I didn't work for the money. You quit when you had enough. You worked for the money.
Right.
You know, the money's just a scoreboard for me.
My gosh, isn't that the truth?
He's such a cool guy.
He is very cool.
So, you know, that activity, getting into the hotel, writing down what do I want on a legal pad, I assume that's probably not the only time you've done something like that.
That would be true. I mean, that was probably the most profound goal setting, really looking at it. I tend to be hard charging. I'm a high D behavioral style, and the challenge with that is I tend not to be introspective enough, right? And so slowing down, looking at, okay, what's working, what's not working, how am I doing, how do I feel? I think that's one of the disciplines that business owners have. And to be quite frank, I think that's probably one of the best things that I did for my own sales business was become an OP. Because I had to learn how to run the market center business, and then I could apply all of those principles to my sales business. Now, you don't have to become an OP to get that, right? You just have to plug into all the leadership training. It's interesting, I get brought in a lot to work with mega agent recruits in my region. And what I've discovered is most mega agents have the same desire. They say, how do I get opportunity? They already know how to sell houses. And usually what they'll do, I'll say the same thing to each one of them. I'll say, look, 2 things. Well, first, one is there's no better place to be than Keller Williams for opportunity. Secondly, is what I know is that if you want opportunity, you have to do 2 things. And that is, 1, you have to blow your business up. Go out there and be as successful as you can be. And number 2, you need to plug yourself into all the leadership training you can get your hands on. Now, I tell that to everybody. The majority of the time, most people don't do that. They go and blow their business up, but they don't do the leadership training. And then they wonder why the opportunities don't come. Now, those who do, you know, I have one gentleman, Craig Rieger. I had that conversation with him. He built a 7-level team. He's an owner of 5 market centers now. He's got a coaching business inside of MAPS. He just bought a winery. I mean,
Very cool.
all of these things, opportunities show up. And,
Yeah.
and I believe it's because he went to every leadership class he could get his hands on when he first came to our company.
And you know, it's funny. I got to have a similar conversation with Mike Brody, one of the original
Yeah.
greats as well. And his best piece of advice was, do your best every day and you'll get the tap. You'll get the opportunity. And I love hearing that echoed through. So, you know, as we start to wrap up our conversation, you know, if we're sitting here 5 years from now, what does life look like for you?
You know, probably not a lot different. I love what I do. It's interesting. I think about this. I'm working probably harder now than I have in a long time. And that's by choice. Because I love the people that I work with. I love what I do. I love the difference that I get to make in people's lives. So as long as I'm enjoying doing that, now I love to travel too, so I do a lot of that. I work hard, play hard, you know. So I try and maintain as much balance, although I believe a balanced life is a myth.
Yeah.
I believe we're really striving for a counterbalanced life. I think in 5 years, I'll probably be more leveraged than I am today, but still doing the same sort of things.
Very cool. So my 2 favorite questions for everybody I get to meet with are, what are the top 2 or 3 books that every business owner should be reading right now?
Yeah, you know, one that has probably had the greatest impact on me would be The 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's how do you accomplish important things in the midst of the whirlwind, right? The whirlwind of life and business, and so that has been a really
awesome read. Yeah,
it's been a great book, and it is applicable to our business today. You can read that book and actually make application immediately. I would tell you the other one that probably impacted me the most was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell. Understanding that, you know what, leadership isn't an innate quality that we're born with, that you can actually develop your leadership skills. And, you know, the world needs more leadership, to be quite frank. I mean, particularly now, we're in a time where we need more leaders, and that will always be sought after.
Very cool. With all the changes in the marketplace, the technology disruption, everything that's going on, why should someone partner with KW today?
You know, if NAR was as passionate about the success of the realtor as Gary Keller is, I would tell you this industry would be in a very different place. I would tell you that Gary believes in keeping the realtor at the center of the transaction as a fiduciary in the transaction, and that is going to be a game changer. I think he's going to redefine how the industry is done, and you know, we're a company of systems and models. We realize that we have, and by the way, not just us, every company has to think of itself as a technology company today. There is not one industry that is not impacted by technology. So the fact that we have technology designed for and built by agents is going to be a game changer. And really, to be quite frank, you just need to submit. You know, I've been with this company now for 19 years, and the impact this company has had on so many people's lives. You know, I think if you were to measure the success of this organization by the number of millionaires it's created, and not because the money in and of itself is important, because it's what we get to do with our money. I mean, we were having a conversation earlier about the impact that KW Cares has had on so many of our agents' lives. But I think if you submit to the model and you follow the model, there's no reason why you cannot be wildly successful beyond your dreams.
Very cool. And so, Bruce, how do you want to be remembered?
You know what? I'd like to be remembered as somebody who cared and made a difference. You know, like I said, I'm passionate about what I do, and it gives me the greatest joy to see people succeed. And that's the thing about our company that I think is, you know, win-win, right? Together, everyone achieves more. All of our belief systems was so resonated with me, and I still get chili bumps, as Mo would call them, right? When I think about our original mission statement of to build careers worth having, businesses worth owning, and lives worth living. I never experienced that before, and that's what I feel like. That's what I'm chasing. That's what I want, and that's what I'd like to be remembered for. Somebody who believes in that.
I love it. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for your time. You're awesome inspiration. I know I've got a lot of cool nuggets, and I just can't wait to go back and jot them all down in my notebook. But Bruce, thank you so much for sitting and chatting with us.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.